So you may have decided to start learning modern Greek. Of course, you start with the letters of the Greek alphabet and you are already very confused. My name is Marielena. I'm the person behind Helinika.com, a platform dedicated on the Greek language, history and culture. And today I will help you pronounce some of the most confusing Greek letters correctly. So from my experience, non-native speakers usually have a difficulty with the following letters: Vita, Gamma, Delta, Theta, Rho, and Epsilon. As you can see, I probably pronounce them differently from how you know them. You might have heard Vita as Beta, Gamma as Gamma, and Epsilon as Upsilon. And this is partly where the whole confusion comes from. Usually, the people who have difficulties with these letters have either studied ancient Greek in a foreign high school or college, or they might speak languages that use the Latin alphabet. In the first case, there is a great chance that their teachers were using the Erasmian pronunciation, which is very different from the modern Greek pronunciation. And in the second case, they see some similarities between Latin letters and Greek letters, and they, of course, assume that they stand for the same sound. And this is actually true in many cases. For example, the letter alpha and the letter A, they look the same and they sound the same. They produce the sound A. But this is not the case with the letters that I have right here. So let's start with the letter Vita. If you learned ancient Greek in high school or in college, you might know it as Beta. And you might think that it produces the sound B. But in modern Greek, this is not the case. Vita is actually much more similar to the letter V in Latin. So have this letter in mind when you try to pronounce some Greek words that contain this letter. Let's see some examples. Velos, not belos, velos. Vima, varos. Always have the letter V in mind when you try to pronounce them. Let's move on to the letter Gamma. Sometimes even we Greeks try to connect it with the letter G, but it doesn't produce the sound G. So Gamma can be described as a very soft G. And in the English language, you usually see it depicted in two different ways, either with a Y or with a WH. But not in all cases, because, for example, WH can also produce other sounds. It produces a different sound when we say where, and it produces a completely different sound when we say who or whom. Well, for the Gamma, have where in mind. So with these two words in mind, let's try to pronounce these Greek words together. Roma, Gelo, Gigantas. Now, I will combine the letters together here. This is Delta and this is Theta. So to begin with, Delta is not Delta. Delta and Theta in English are usually depicted both with TH. Delta in words such as the, them, their. Theta in words such as through and thorough. So this is a nice trick to be able to distinguish them, because most non-native speakers that I've met, they think that we produce the same sound with these two letters. But no, there is a small distinction. So let's see some examples. Then, Danai, Θέλω, Θάλασσα. As you can see, they don't produce the same sound. Now let's move on to the letter Rho. Now, with the exception of German speakers and French speakers, most people have no problem pronouncing this sound, the sound ro. The problem is that this letter resembles a lot the letter P, and they think that it produces the same sound. For example, they may say πόδα instead of ρόδα. So just keep this in mind. This is actually the Greek equivalent of the letter R. And for the P sound, we use the letter P that you might know as pi. And last but not least, I should also mention the letter Epsilon. As you can see, it didn't say upsilon, and that is because it produces the sound E, not the sound U. For the sound U, we use two letters together, omicron and epsilon. So we have uranos, but we also have hysteria. The first letter is epsilon here, and it creates the sound E. And I should clarify that we have a lot of letters that produce this exact same sound in modern Greek. We have iota, we have eta, we have epsilon that I just mentioned, and then we also have two letter combinations, omicron iota and epsilon iota. And in modern Greek, they sound exactly the same. But when we read a text, we can understand a lot about the word from the way it is written. For example, eta and iota are mostly seen in nouns and adjectives. Iota is usually associated with neutral nouns and adjectives, for example, to pani, whereas eta is associated with female nouns and adjectives. Ήρεμη, ή ήρεμη. Omicron iota is associated with male nouns and adjectives in plural, ή πλούσιοι, and epsilon iota is usually associated with verbs. Παίζει. Epsilon, usually it's in the beginning or in the middle of certain words and not at the end of the word, with the exception with a set of irregular nouns that there's no reason to mention today, such as Todori. But epsilon can also be seen together with two other vowels, epsilon and alpha, and in this case it produces a different sound. But I don't want to confuse you even further, so if you're already on this level, you have already learned all the Greek letters and you're ready to learn the letter combinations, I do recommend that you check my other videos where I talk about this subject and expand your knowledge. So I hope you found this video quite helpful. I should also clarify that sometimes when we try to write some Greek words, especially names of locations, with Latin letters, we do use sometimes some letters that don't produce the correct sound in English. For example, this place right here is called βουλιαγμένη, but you might see it written as βουλιαγμένη. So this is something to keep in mind. So if you're a subscriber, you will get a new video on Thursday. So do consider to hit the subscribe button and have a wonderful day or night. Bye.